Okie dokie. So, today my talk is going to be about leadership. And I'm going to give you 5 main points in my talk. Number 1 is, what is a leader and why are they important? Secondly is, where are we as leaders leading people to? Number 3, what does that look like in real life? Number 4, what does it feel like being a leader? And that 4th one is going to be my longest point. And number 5 is, how can you, as a young person, lead people? So I'm going to go on to my first thing, which is, what is a leader? And it's going to be a very interactive talk. So if you guys can think about something to say when you hear the word leader, what is a word that comes into your mind? So I'm going to ask everyone to say 1 or 2 words. So we're going to start from Yeram, Sue, and then Shwen, if she's there, and then Mia, Caleb, and I'll tell you your order, but we're going to go around in a little snake. So starting from Yeram, what do you think of when you hear the word leader?
Pass the mic.
Yeah, those are all valid words. Sue, do you want to go next?
Like community.
Yeah, community. Shwen is not there yet, so Caleb?
People who lead people. And
yeah, and Jacob?
I think leader is represent people, a person.
Yeah, representatives. And Mia?
Voice.
Voice. Interesting. Oh, and I think now Daniel is back. What do you think of, give me 1 or 2 words when you think of the word leader. What comes to mind, Danielle?
First thing is a shepherd. Kind of shepherd, I think. And sorry. Yeah, shepherd and being honesty.
Honesty. Yeah, and we skipped Shwen because she wasn't there a second, but Shwen. Humble. Yeah, that's a good word, definitely. Shwen, and then Ivan.
I think of wise and also servant. Yes.
Yeah.
Taking people to the right way.
Yeah. Do any of the young leaders want to popcorn and say 1 or 2 things? Maybe 1 or 2 young leaders.
Stress.
Stress, very valid word. Any other young leaders?
servant.
And example as well.
Yeah, servant as example. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. So I'm going to talk to you. I can hear my echo. Please, can you mute yourself? Thank you. So we were talking about what is a leader, one of my first points. So I asked the same question to Google, similar to what Haram did in his teamwork talk. And Google said that a leader is someone who can lead or guide others in a particular direction. And in our teamwork activities we've done so far, we've seen that a leader is very, very important because of their role. And I'll talk a little bit about that now. So firstly, leaders are important because all teams need a leader. because a leader is the person who makes the overall decisions. They're responsible for the entire team, and they're the ones who communicate the goal that's in their mind to the rest of the team. And by communicating, the leader can make sure that the whole team is pulling in the same direction, like what Haram said in his teamwork talk, about all the cows pulling in the same direction. So that's why a leader is important in a non-Christian context. But my talk today is going to tell you guys why a leader is important as Christians, how we can all be leaders. So, why am I talking to you guys about leadership? Why is it relevant? Well, I assume that most of you who joined GLT knew what it stood for. So can you guys all unmute? Doesn't matter if we're out of sync, but what does GLT stand for?
Global leadership.
Training.
Yay! That's right, global leadership training. So, when you signed up to the camp, did you want to be a leader? Yes, put your hand up if you wanted to be a leader. Yay! All right. So, from this online GLT camp, we're training you, global leadership training. We're training you to lead leadership, people from all around the world, global, to Jesus. So, from this GLT camp, what we want you to get is to be able to lead people to Jesus from all around the world. So that is, what is a leader and why are they important? And now I'm going to talk about my second point, which is where are we leading people to? So I've got a little diagram to draw for you guys. So I'm going to try and share my screen. This is where Discord decides to mess up sometimes. So please bear with me if things go wrong. But let's see how it all goes. So can you guys all click onto the live stream, please? You should be able to see a blank screen, and now my mouse is in the middle of it. Okay. Can you all see it? Please put your thumbs up if you can see. All clicked. Very good. Okay. So I'm going to draw you guys a little diagram to illustrate as a sort of metaphor for my whole talk about where we're leading people to. So let's imagine this whole whiteboard as different paths that people can choose in their life. So there is a very, very wide road. And this road represents where the world wants us to go. Yeah. And it's very wide because it's easy to follow this road. It's very wide. Lots of people choose this road. Oops. And yeah, so that's the world's choice. And that path is in the middle of a big forest. And it's very difficult to go anywhere else because there's lots of trees in the way. So these trees are kind of like obstacles. So it kind of forces people to follow this really wide and easy path which the world tells us we should take. All right. So where are you guys in the picture? I'm going to draw a little human. And let's imagine this is you. You. And you are, ooh, I can't spell. You are a leader. Yay. So, there are lots of people in the world. As you know, there are around 7 billion. And a lot of people are following this easy path. But what you as a leader, as someone who knows Jesus, is doing, you are making a new path through the obstacles. Sometimes you might need to chop down some trees so that you have space to get there. But what you're doing is leading people to get to a final destination, like it says on your GPS. You have reached your destination. And that destination, as some of you might be able to guess, is Jesus. Yay. So, where are we leading people to? We are leading people to Jesus, to God's kingdom. And God's kingdom is a heavenly kingdom. It's the unseen world. And that's a little bit difficult to demonstrate on a 2D diagram. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd like you guys to all look at my camera now. So I'll stop streaming. And can you guys all see my face? Yeah, all right. So, as I said, we're leading people to God's kingdom. And it's quite hard to illustrate that on a 2D diagram. So I've drawn that out again for you in real life. And this little string represents, I don't know if you can see it properly, but this little string represents the path going to Jesus. And this string isn't going on the same plane as the paper. It's going out into a new dimension, into God's unseen world, to God's kingdom. And that's what means that it's not always easy to go against the current of the world and to follow Jesus, because we're leading people to this outside of the world space, to God's kingdom, to heaven. And yeah, it's quite difficult to do that at times. And I'm going to elaborate on that a bit later. But to sort of show you guys what that means is, I'm going to read to you guys Psalm 77, verse 19. And the context of this psalm is that it's talking about Moses and how Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. And this is talking about how God makes a way that looks impossible, but he can still do it. So it says, "Your road led through the sea, your pathway through the mighty waters, a pathway no one knew was there." So it's showing you that most people don't know that this path even exists, but we as leaders are showing them that, hey, look, there's this path, you can get to Jesus. You can get to Jesus. And that is what we're doing. We're leaders who make a way through the trees, through the new dimension, and we're leading people to the heavenly dimension. So we sang, "You're a waymaker." God is the ultimate waymaker, but we are channels to be his waymaker too, so that people can reach heaven. Okay, so I've talked to you about this diagram, but number 3, what does that look like in real life? I know this is a diagram. Can you explain the metaphor so I can apply it to my life, please, Hannah? Yes, I can. So I'm going to introduce you guys to a Bible character. I mentioned him a bit earlier, but imagine that this little toy is Moses. So let's put Moses into the picture. So Moses' goal, where his destination was, is he's leading the Israelites to the promised land. So his team and his followers that he had to move from the big path to the small path are the Israelites. Moses and his little gang of Israelites, which is quite a big group of people. It was probably at least 1 million people. And this setting was in Egypt at first because all the Israelites were slaves. So instead of trees, imagine lots of pyramids. And Moses also led people through the wilderness, so a desert. So just imagine now, instead of just pyramids, there's lots of sand now. There were 2 different places that Moses led people, in Egypt and also in the desert, in the wilderness. And one way that Moses was able to go against the worldly current, I mentioned it earlier, is Moses led people through impossible situations. So he led people through a physical barrier, the Red Sea, and also he was able to lead the Israelites in the middle of the desert for 40 years, which is a long time, but God provided for them, and Moses was able to them. So that's one way in which we can apply this to someone's life in the Bible, and I'm going to explain the same diagram in context of another Bible character. I want you guys to guess who this Bible character is. Hello. This Bible character is very famous for having a cool coat. And you guys can unmute yourselves and try and guess who this character is. By the way, his coat wasn't white. In the Bible, people think it was very colorful coats. So if you guys think you know who this Bible character is, please unmute and feel free to shout out the answer.
Joseph.
Yes, Joseph. 10 points to Xuan's group. Okay, so Joseph was also a leader. Let's put him into the picture. Ooh. So Joseph, oh my goodness, sorry, ignore me. So Joseph was a leader in 2 different places as well. Joseph was in a prison. So imagine instead of trees, you have lots of cells with bars and lots of angry prisoners, scary looking people. And in that context, Joseph was looking after prisoners. So my string fell out, but imagine it's connected. So his goal was, in that context, was to look after the prisoners and lead them and be friendly. And his followers were the prisoners. In another slightly more important context, Joseph was in Pharaoh's court, so in the royal place. Joseph was the second most important person in Egypt after Pharaoh. And so imagine lots of pyramids again. So Joseph was in charge of giving people food in the middle of a famine. So his goal was to be generous and give people food. And his followers, who he had to lead, was a lot of people because not many countries were prepared for the famine, so they didn't have enough food to eat. And I think one way in which Joseph goes against the worldly current to follow this new path was how Joseph was so forgiving, because he was betrayed by his brothers, he was sold by his own brothers, but he displayed forgiveness, and he cried and he forgave his brothers after all that they had done. And I think that every time we're leading a group of people to a new dimension, often we have to display a little bit of God's character. God teaches us about his character so we can lead other people towards him. So for Joseph, that was forgiveness. And for Moses, that was leading people through impossible situations. Okay, so now I'm on to my 3rd point. What does it feel like? Oh, sorry, that's my 4th point. What does it feel like being a leader? So obviously there are hard things about being a leader and joys of being a leader. So I'm going to talk about the difficulties, the hardships and the obstacles, and then I will move on to talk about how to overcome those obstacles, and then I'll also talk about the joys of being a leader. So I'm going to share my screen again, but before I do that, I would like 5 volunteers. So people who are not young leaders, if you want to volunteer, can you please put your hand up? 5 people, please. Don't be shy. Oh yes.
Should we give points? Maybe like 5 points for each volunteer.
Okay, Xuan, Sue, Caleb, Mia, one more.
Yeah, Ram, do it. We are on -3. Yeah.
Okay. So Xuan is number 1, Sue is number 2, Caleb is number 3, Mia is number 4, Yaram is number 5. So if I say number 3, just I would have forgotten your name by now. So just you know which number you are. So I'll share my screen now, and I'll tell you when you need to read out the Bible verse. So can you all see? It says it's loading, right? A burning bush. I can't see your faces now because I'm sharing my screen. So can someone just give me a little shout saying, okay. So, basically, I'm going to talk to you about a few Bible characters and different hardships of being a leader. So there are 4 main hardships I'm going to talk to you about, and we're going to dive into the first one. And this first one is about the fact that it's very difficult when God first tells you, I want you to be my leader. So we're going to look at the example of Moses, hence the burning bush. So, and this is Moses' reaction when God told him, I'm going to use you to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. So, volunteer number 1, Shwen, could you please read this Bible verse?
Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. But Moses protested to God, "Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?"
Okay, thank you. So Moses' first reaction wasn't, yes, God, I'd love to be a leader. He was actually doubting himself. He's like, I'm not even important. How am I meant to do it? And that can sometimes be our own reaction too. And God replied to Moses by saying, don't worry, I'm going to be with you. I'm with you, so what can go wrong? But this was the next reply, which Moses said to God. Can volunteer number 2, can Sue read it out, please?
Exodus 4. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say, the Lord never appeared to you?
Yeah. So you can see that Moses wasn't very convinced even then. And then what God replied to Moses with was, God said, okay, here's a miracle you can do. Miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, you can also do this if they don't believe you. And he didn't only stop with 2 miracles. God gave Moses the ability to do 3 different miracles to prove that God was with Moses. And so I want volunteer number 3 to read the next reply that Moses said.
But Moses pleased with the Lord. Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never had been I am not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I got forgot it, and my words got tangled.
Yeah. So this time Moses said, actually, God, yeah, you've shown me these things, but I'm not good at speaking. Can you please send someone else? And God is still very gracious. He says, Moses, who made a person's mouth? Who gave the ability to you to speak? It's me. And don't worry, because I'm going to give my words in you. And this is what Moses replies with. But Moses again pleaded, Lord, please send anyone else. And then it gets kind of funny in the Bible. It says God gets angry at Moses for saying that. But that's besides the point. I just want to tell you guys that difficulty number 1 is feeling that you're not important enough to be a leader. And that's not true. You guys are all chosen by God. You've all joined GLT for a reason. And God has a purpose for your life to be a leader. So no matter what kind of thoughts and doubts are in your mind, I want you to remember that instead of feeling that you're not important enough or that you don't have enough qualities, I want you to know, instead of that difficulty, to have confidence that God is with you and he chose you to be a leader. And sort of linked to this point number 1 about the difficulty is the fear that you are too young. Because you might be thinking right now, okay, Hannah, you just said I'm a leader, and it's okay if I don't have enough skills or qualities, but I actually don't have any experience of being a leader. I'm too young. I want to be a leader when I'm 40 years old and I have all the experience in the world. Volunteer number 4, would you please be able to read the next Bible verse, please? Mia, right? Oh, can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Oh no, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that? Oh.
Sorry, where did you hear until?
We heard everything.
Oh, okay. So, sorry. I can hear my echo. Oh, thank you. So, Mia, is she still here?
Oh, she's saying something. She said, can someone else read it? I'm having Wi-Fi issues.
She's having Wi-Fi issues.
Sing, could you please read it
okay.
for?
Sing, can read it.
O sovereign Lord, I said, I can't speak for you. I'm too young. The Lord replied, don't say I'm too young, for you must go wherever I send you and say whatever I tell you. And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken.
Yeah. So Jeremiah was very young. So if there's a small bear to represent Jeremiah. Hello. Jeremiah was a prophet in the Old Testament, and he was very, very important to deliver messages to Israel. And even though he was young, God said, I've chosen you. Don't say I'm too young. There's no such thing as too young because I'm with you. And if that doesn't convince you, there is another example of a leader, a young leader in the Bible. Well, there are many, but I've just chosen 2 for now. And this person actually appeared in our Logos passage today. His name is Timothy. So, volunteer number 5, would you be able to read this verse, please?
Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity.
Amen. So this is a letter that Paul wrote to Timothy. And I hope this proves the point that you can be leaders even if you are your age right now. Other examples of young leaders in the Bible are Joseph, who I mentioned earlier. He was very young. And Daniel, who got thrown into the lion's den. Esther, who was a queen. And Mary, who was Jesus' mum. Mary was probably around 16 years old when she was pregnant with Jesus. So that sums up the point about difficulty number 1, that it can be difficult when God first calls you, but you have to overcome that obstacle. Even if you don't feel like you're qualified enough, you are, because God is with you. And second difficulty, you guys can now click onto my face. You can exit the stream. It will keep running. But if you guys exit the screen and look at my face, hello, is that life can be difficult. So life can be difficult, but God can use those difficulties to help shape you and shape your character to be a better leader. So I'm going to give you some examples. We talked about Joseph. Hello. And Joseph was sold by his brothers to be a slave. And then after he was a slave, he worked in the household of Potiphar. And he worked very hard. He became a good leader in Potiphar's house as well. But then Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of something that he didn't even do. So Joseph went to prison. And I believe that in those years in the prison, Joseph probably felt quite frustrated and disappointed. What did he do wrong to be betrayed by his brothers? What did he do wrong to be put in prison? He was falsely accused. He didn't even do anything wrong. And he could have put the blame all on God. Said, God, it's all your fault. You're a terrible God. How dare you not look after me? But Joseph didn't do that. He worked hard even in the prison. And the point I want to get across is that even when life is difficult, God can use those difficulties in your life to help shape you as a leader. I believe that probably God was getting Joseph's heart ready before he became the second most powerful person in Egypt, who would be in charge of giving food out to all the hungry people in the middle of the famine. So God can use difficult parts of your life to train you to have good characters. Another example is Jesus. Jesus was also a leader, but he had a difficult period in the time of his life. He had many difficult things, but one example is how he had 40 days in the desert, in the wilderness, with nothing to eat and nothing to drink. So he was fasting in the wilderness, and he got tempted by Satan, and Satan was saying different things. But after those 40 very, very difficult days, Jesus came out of the desert in the power of the Holy Spirit. So even after that difficult situation, Jesus was trained. He had lots and lots of power even after those 40 difficult days. And that's when he started his ministry. That's when he started gathering his disciples and doing God's work. So number 2, the obstacle is that life can be difficult, but that doesn't mean God can't make you a leader. In fact, having difficult situations in your life is what helps you to become a leader. Because the difficult situations can shape you and make you have a better character. So number 1, God's calling can be hard. Number 2, life can be hard. Number 3, leaders don't always lead in easy situations. So what do I mean by that? Joseph led in the middle of a famine. No food, leading hungry people is a very difficult thing to do. Moses led people when they were being chased by their enemy. So I've got a little Bible verse here. If you guys can all go back to the stream and look at the Bible verse. I'm not going to ask anyone to read it out. Just take a look at it. So Moses led the Israelites when they were in the middle of being chased by the Egyptians. So you can kind of see the panic that all the Israelites were saying, Moses, what are you doing? Why are we trapped? There's a sea in front of us. What are you going to do? How are you going to lead us out of here? Are we all going to die? That was all the panic that the people who Moses was leading was saying to Moses. And I'm sure Moses would have been thinking the same thing. But if you're a leader and people are complaining to you, it makes it 100 times more difficult to have a clear thought, to have clear thoughts. But what Moses' reply is that he knows where to put his trust in. He says, the Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. So Moses definitely was not leading in the middle of an easy situation. It was probably very, very difficult. In fact, it was life-threatening. All the Israelites could have died. But Moses knew where to place his trust. And that meant that even in a difficult situation, Moses was at peace. If you guys can go off the stream again and you guys can look at my face again if you want to. Another example of leaders in difficult situations is Jesus. Jesus led Israel and his disciples when Israel was under occupation by the Roman Empire. So that was quite difficult. And another example is us young leaders today doing GLT. We're leading GLT in a difficult circumstance. We've never done it online before. This is our first time. And it's difficult, but we're still leading. And what my point is for the third difficulty is that you won't always lead and be a leader when everything is easy. You will have stressful situations. As Gina said in the beginning, she thinks of the word stress when she thinks of leader. But even in these kinds of situations, God is with you. So that helps you to overcome the obstacle. And now for the fourth obstacle, the challenge, the difficulty of being a leader. If you guys all go back to the stream again, you can see a white screen. Just say a little yes that you're back on the stream.
Yes.
And so I can check you can hear me.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you, guys. So, number 4 is the fact that when you're leading people, the people who you're leading, the people who should be following the string to go to God's dimension, even those people can make it difficult for you. So your teammates can complain. So I'm just going to put a picture on. So this, again, is Moses and people, the Israelites, complaining to him. I'm going to put a few Bible verses up, but I just want you to read them in your own time, and I'll just keep talking. So Leading people towards God's heavenly direction is quite hard because people can go against you. They can have resistance against you. For example, the Israelites were very hungry in the desert. But despite the fact that Moses prayed to God and God provided manna every day, which was a miracle, the Israelites said, "No, we want cucumbers, we want melons, we want leeks, onions, garlic. Oh, Egypt was so much better, even though we were slaves. Why did you bring us into this desert? All we ever eat is manna. It's horrible." So they were complaining to Moses, and they want meat. How was Moses supposed to get meat in the middle of the desert? So this is what Moses did. As the leader, he just poured out his heart to God. He said, "God, everything is so difficult. Why am I a leader? Why do I have to do this? It's so hard." If you see here, it says, "How am I meant to take them to your kingdom? How am I meant to do this? It's so hard. Where am I supposed to get meat for all these people? How can I do this? It's impossible." And I just want you guys to know that as a leader, things won't always be easy. But, yeah, that's one example where people made it difficult for Moses. But miraculously, after Moses poured out his heart to God, God did provide lots of meat. In fact, he provided meat for all these millions of people for a whole entire month until they became sick of meat. So, God will always provide, and God will help you as a leader. But it is also important when you're struggling that you talk to God. You don't have to pretend that everything's okay. You can open your heart to God and tell him, and he will always listen. Yeah, so that was showing that it's very difficult. That wasn't the only time it was very difficult for Moses. Another time, again, I'm going to put a Bible passage up, was when so Moses was the overall leader. Moses and Aaron and Miriam were the co-leaders. And under the three main leaders, there were another group of little leaders. And then there was the Israelites. So it's like a little pyramid. And so Moses obviously trusted all of his teammates, the sub-leaders that he had. But people, even leaders who Moses had appointed, rebelled against Moses. And that must have really broken Moses' heart. These are people he trusted, but they plotted to choose a different leader, to go back to Egypt. So remember my diagram I was talking about? You as a leader, you're making a new path for people to follow. But some people who were meant to be following Moses went back down to the worldly path, and they rebelled against Moses. So that's also how challenge number 4 of being a leader is that even your own teammates might betray you. And I want to challenge you all again. A lot of you put your hands up in the beginning. Do you want to be a leader? So I'm going to ask it again now. I can't see your hands because I'm sharing my screen, but it's a rhetorical question. Do you really still want to be a leader? I know the answer for me is still a yes, because I know the joys of being a leader. So you guys can all go back to my face again, so more clicking. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to overcome those 4 difficult things I talked about. God's calling, life being difficult, leaders not leading in easy situations, and how your teammates can cause things to be difficult. I'm going to talk about how you can overcome those difficulties and obstacles. I want you guys to know that you are not the overall leader. God is always the overall leader. God is in control of everything. We aren't. But we are his leader because we are his channel. We are the vine that can represent God, and we are his little leaders in the world. So So there's no need to stress about when it's difficult, when things are very hard, because we know, oh, I'm not the overall leader. God is the overall leader. God is responsible. He knows the overall plan, and he is in charge of the overall plan. All I have to do is follow my overall leader, which is God. Oops. So I'm going to read a little verse to you from Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. And this is what Moses tells his successor. So the next person who's going to lead the Israelites, which is Joshua. So Moses tells Joshua, after Moses is about to die, before Moses is about to die, he tells Joshua this. He says, "So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid and do not panic. For the Lord your God will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you." So Moses had learnt, if you guys look at the stream again, Moses had learnt here. He remembered this day when he was leading people through the waters, that actually it's not Moses who is fully in control of the situation, it's God. So God is in front of us. He's the one who's making the way. All we have to do, God is making the path. We just have to lead people down this path. We don't have to worry about making the path. We just have to follow God. So that's one way to overcome difficulties. And also with difficulties, I mentioned earlier, if everything is easy, there's not really much a leader is there to do. Leaders are meant to lead when everything is difficult so that people know where to go. So even if you face one of these 4 difficulties, just remember that it will help you grow and it will help you be an even better leader. So that's me talking about overcoming obstacles. And now, what are the joys of being a leader? So I talked about what it feels like being a leader, hard things, how to overcome the hard things, and now the joys of being a leader. So if you guys can all go back to my camera again. Whoop. Yay. So I think one very obvious joy is when you're leading people down this road and when you finally reach your destination. That is a really, really big joy. And from my own experience of being able to tell one of my friends about Jesus, there's nothing more amazing than when they accept Jesus and they can talk about Jesus to you. It's very, very encouraging. So when you reach your destination, that's one thing that can bring a leader lots of joy. Another thing that can bring joy is when you're actually on the path. When you're somewhere on the path and you see your teammates and you watch your teammates grow and you're seeing that you're getting closer and closer to God's kingdom. But you can see that your teammates are getting stronger legs as they're trekking up mountains or that they're... So when you watch someone else's faith grow because you're leading them, that's also something that can bring a leader a lot of joy. And these are not the only things that can bring a leader joy. There are many more, but because I don't have lots of time, I'll now move on to the final section, which is how can you lead as a young person? So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. You guys can all still hear me, right? Okay. So point number 5, how can you lead as a young person? So I talked about what does a leader, does that look like in context, and what does it feel like being a leader, but how can you be a leader? So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own personal story, and then I'll give you some practical tips about how you can be a leader. So I was a leader this year in my own school. I was someone called a head girl, which is someone who is responsible for a team of people called prefects. And so Hannah and head boy, head girl, and then there were prefects who were also leaders, and then there was the school. So I was in charge of making sure people felt welcome in my school. So that was where I was a leader. But there was also a time when it was very, very difficult. So not everyone listened to me. People didn't always contribute. I think it was probably because people were all quite demotivated because of lockdown and COVID. And because people were not physically present with me, it was quite difficult to lead them. And people complained, similar to how people complained to Moses. People complained to me, and I was thinking, how am I meant to do this? So I asked God for help. Because I knew when I applied to be head girl, I said, God, I only want to be head girl if you want me to be head girl. So before I had my interview, I had in mind, even if I don't get the position, I know that God will do something. If I get the position, He wants me to do something. So I'll do that. So when it was difficult, I asked God again, God, it's very, very difficult. People aren't listening to me. People are complaining. But I know you made me a leader for some reason. So I want your will, not mine. I want you to do what you want to do, not what I want to do. I don't want to build myself up and make myself have an amazing reputation just for being head girl, but I want you to lead me where you want me to do, what you want me to do. I want to bless the nations. Because my school is international, I thought God wanted me to bless lots of countries. So I also prayed, God, please help me to trust my teammates more. So that's how I asked God for help. I prayed. And then I'll talk a little bit about how things improved and how I developed as a leader. So after I prayed several times. It wasn't just one time. But God helped give me peace, even when I couldn't control my circumstances. And that was very useful because things were very chaotic at times. But God was the one who helped me think. He helped me have clear thoughts and He gave me peace. So that was really helpful. Thank you, God, for that. And to give a specific example of something difficult that happened was something called inductions, which means that I and my little team, well, it wasn't very little, there were 70 people in my team, but we had to be in charge of making people in the school feel welcome when they first arrived. And this had to be online. So we had done it once in September, and now we were doing it again in January. So I said to one of my teammates, okay, you've seen how it's done, you can now be in charge. But this person left it a little bit last minute, and because I was the overall leader, I had to help, and it was very, very stressful at the time. But again, I prayed to God. I said, okay, God, I want to learn from this. I don't want to complain. And it was able to be sorted. And God really, really helped me. I thought I would have a terrible headache, but while I was planning it, I didn't. I had a headache afterwards, but God really helped me to have peace. And that was really, really amazing. So that's one thing that improved and how I developed as a leader. And so I talked about how I improved, how I asked God for help where it was difficult, where I was a leader. But how did being a leader help me actually reach the goal? How did I reach that destination? And to be honest, I don't actually know yet why God made me head girl, where I led people to, which person I led down that path. But I know that even though it was difficult, God trained me. He trained me to be more accepting and more loving towards my teammates, even if they didn't listen to me. He taught me to be patient. And even if I don't know even if I don't know who I led down that path, and even if I never find out if I ever led anyone there, I know then and I trust that God somehow had, in the past year, used my actions to bless someone. Maybe I'll find out later who it is, maybe I won't. But that doesn't matter because I trust God with it. And I hope that I would have at some point shown my team of 70 people, the prefects. I hope that I have shown God's love to them and a glimpse of God's patience with them as well. So that was my experience. But I want to ask you guys now to put your hands up if you guys have any positions of responsibility, whether that's in school, in church, or anywhere else. Just put your hands up if you're a leader somewhere, if you have a position of responsibility. Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you do or you don't. Oh, wow, there's lots of hands. Well done for coming on GLT. And by the way, you will all be leaders in the English camp. So, yeah. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about practical tips about how to lead people down this path away from the world, but down a difficult path. So I'm going to share my screen again. If you guys can just get ready to click on the stream once it's ready. Ooh. Spoiler alert. Okay, loading. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this idea of influence and how much you can control. So in the center of the screen is a circle with the word leader in it. So that represents a leader. It's a person. And leaders have a certain amount of things that they have authority over, so they can control how it happens. And there is also another circle called a sphere of influence. So this represents how much you can inspire people, even if you can't control them. So this is what a normal leader might look like. Maybe someone who's a leader who is 40 years old or 30 years old. But you guys are young leaders. So what does that look like? Well, because we're younger, we don't have as much power. So our circle of authority and things that we can control is a lot smaller. But also because we're younger, I think we have a really big sphere of influence. Because when you're young, people are more easily inspired by you. If you think about someone who's had a Nobel Peace Prize, if you think about the youngest person who's ever had a Nobel Peace Prize, who is Malala Yousafzai, you get even more amazed because she was only 17 or 16 when she got the Nobel Peace Prize, rather than if someone who was 30 got the Peace Prize. So as young people, we have a really big sphere of influence. People are more amazed when we can do things. Also, our sphere of influence is bigger because we have social media. There are more people that we can connect to. So, but how do you influence people? How do you influence people so that they want to go down this really narrow and difficult path? I think one of the biggest things is being an example. Just like Jesus is an example for us, we can be a mirror and we can also reflect Jesus to other people. So we can be the example by mirroring Jesus. So we can do that in our actions, in our words, basically everything we say and everything we do. We can influence people by reflecting Jesus. Another thing that you can do to be an example is, how do you more practically reflect Jesus? So I understand the image, but how do I do that in my life? Be aware of God's presence and try, so whenever you're in a situation, think to yourself, where is Jesus in this room? And try and bring God's presence into your conversations, into your actions. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen again so you guys can click back on my face. And lastly, how else can you be a leader? You can use all the skills that we're teaching you in GLT. So we learned about teamwork, we learned about communication from Yongbin today, and many other skills that we're teaching you. But use those skills to keep being a leader and to lead people to that amazing destination, to Jesus. So before I end, I want to challenge, this is my ending, I want to challenge you all. Before we move on to prayer, I want to challenge you, is there anything in your heart that's stopping you from being a leader? Maybe it's the fear that you're not good enough, or maybe the fear that you're too young. Maybe you're afraid of going against the world's current. You're thinking, who will ever follow me to do this? Or maybe there is a fear about what others might think of you. Or maybe there's something else that God is showing you in your heart. While we have some prayer time before break, I want you guys to pray out what God is showing you in your heart. So take some time now. There will be some music in the background. Take some time now to ask God if there's anything that's blocking you from becoming a leader. And also, some of the young leaders might want to take you into a room and pray together with you. So we'll have some time of quiet time with prayer music in the background, and then we will also have time praying for each other. So that was the end of my talk. I'll just pray to close, and then we'll turn on some music. Okay. God, thank you for this time to be able to talk about leadership to the wonderful GLT team. I pray, thank you for bringing them here to listen to this talk. And I pray that you'll show them how they can be a leader. I pray that you'll show them any obstacles that are in their heart. And I just pray that you'll really be able to powerfully use them, because you have an amazing purpose for each and every one of them. I just pray that they will have a glimpse of it, that they'll be able to take out a step of faith and choose to be a leader in you. I pray all of this in your name, Jesus. Amen. So you guys can spend some